Hey, besties. I'm here on time today. On time today. Hi, Kangton. Yes, welcome, everybody. I'm on time today because I don't want to be on here that long. I know I always say that, and then I'm always on here that long, but I do have my doggy with me today, and she's a bit of a yapper, so she yaps less when I can pay attention to her. She's sitting down by me right now. But I just figure maybe I give her a little bit more attention. So I'm going to make this succinct as possible and pull some cards for the full moon, as well as any other transits going, or the new moon. Excuse me, I keep saying full moon, but the new moon. I'm going to pull some cards for her, just do a brief overview of what's coming up this week, and then we're going to wrap this bitch up. So quick announcements. If you didn't hear last week, my prices will increase starting November 1st. I picked a date, November 1st. It's a Saturday. And prices will go up. So if you would like to book a session with me before then, please do so at my current rates. I have availability every Wednesday from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Central Time, and then after sometime in January, I think I'll be able to do alternating Mondays again. Unless I don't get into this program I'm trying to get into, then I'll be open every other Monday sooner than that. And other than that, I have the 2026 iCals. If you would like them, I have noticed that the timing on my iCals might be a little bit off. So there's that, but the dates are correct nonetheless. So um if you care less about the exact moment in time that a transit happens and you just want the dates, I do have iCals for that. I'm going to try to work on them. Still working on the lunar iCals as well because the eclipses for next year are showing up weird in my software. So if you would like to get the 2026 iCals from me, just email me at mix.mercuryastro@gmail.com. You can also send donations to that email address on PayPal. Please send them through PayPal so it goes into my business account and not my personal account. That would be amazing. And if you have any issues, just let me know. But yeah, this is my email address, my business email. Just be like, hey, I want the 2026 iCals. Send them my way, and I will do that. Cool. Okay, let's get into it. So first, um, because we have a bunch of water in the sky, and I told you guys last week about water trines and feeling your feelings in your body and all that good stuff. There's a post circulating called Sit With That Feeling. I know it's something that we talk about a lot, so I thought I would just list off what this recommends as far as what sitting with your feelings actually means. It says to let emotions exist without judgment. And judgment doesn't always necessarily mean shame, it just means without making your feelings mean something about you or about the situation. Just let the feeling come up and notice it. Second one, acknowledge and allow yourself to feel. So if the feeling comes up, instead of trying to run away from it, ignoring it, or numbing it, just allow it to come up, feel it, and then again, let it exist without judgment. It's also helpful to learn how to identify what you're feeling. So that's where the feelings wheel comes in. Giving yourself a word or a name for that feeling goes a long way, especially whenever it comes to regulating as well. It's just nice to know and be able to talk about how you feel. Another one, bring awareness to the way that you're speaking to yourself. So if a feeling comes up or if you're in a situation that feels emotionally intense, notice the thoughts that you have and how you are speaking to yourself in your own mind. If you're judging yourself or shaming yourself, staying mindful and present. This is a tough one, but this is what the meditation girlies are always talking about. Staying mindful and present. It doesn't mean that uh, you are necessarily calm or cool or collected. It just means you have a sense of what's going on right now, right in front of you, that is within your control versus maybe thinking in the past or the present. Another one, validate what or why you're feeling. So I guess somewhere along the line, validate what you're feeling is just like, wow, yeah, I am upset. Wow, I guess I really am nervous. Wow, I really am scared. Whatever it is. Wow, I'm so happy. Like just validating it, letting it be true for you instead of invalidating it, saying that you shouldn't feel this way, or again, shaming or judging or having some weird bias against the natural feelings coming up for you. Another one, notice where you're feeling it. What physical sensations are you experiencing? This is a really, really good one, especially for the sit with it of it all. Whenever you can locate the sensation in your body and just feel into the sensation, it makes it a lot easier to get out of the mental chatter of it all because you're just focusing on a sensation. Also helps with being mindful and present. And then practice compassion. How would you support a loved one in the situation? So if you're struggling to be compassionate for yourself, imagine that you are someone else and how would you deal with that person if they were having the experience you're having, and then give that to yourself. Don't label your emotions as good or bad. So again, letting your emotions exist without judgment. And then last but not least, getting curious. So getting curious about a feeling is a great way to get around feeling judgment about it, because if you are in a place of wonder, and curiosity and even awe about a feeling that you're feeling, then you can again be more present with it and wonder a little bit more why it's coming up, what's going on around that, versus maybe projecting onto the other people involved or onto the situation. So cool. Sitting with feelings. Very useful skill, especially for the transits coming up this week. Okay. This week we have, starting tomorrow, Mercury conjunct Mars in Libra. This is one of our first conjunctions in Libra, I believe. Other than I think no, yeah, one of our first conjunctions in Libra. So that I think will come up as we're talking about the new moon, since the new moon in Libra is on Tuesday. Then we have Mercury in Scorpio already on Thursday, is that Thursday or Friday? October 24th? I think that's Friday, October 24th. Mercury in Libra, and then Mercury in Libra. Mercury in Scorpio, and then later that day, Mercury will trine Jupiter in Cancer. So more of that water and feeling stuff. And then come Saturday, we'll have Mercury trine Saturn. So that's Mercury in Scorpio trine Saturn in Pisces. All right, I'm going to start shuffling cards so that we can read for the new moon and this Mercury-Mars conjunction that's coming along with it. Remember, conjunctions and new moons alike, which the new moon is basically a Sun-Mercury conjunction in and of itself. Conjunctions are when planets are in the same sign at the same degree. So they are right on top of each other, or they're kissing, as I like to say, hugging, high-fiving, whatever you want to call it. And when they're in the same sign, that means they are teamed up to do the same task or to accomplish the same goal. They are embodying the same archetype and creating a collective or individual experience around what it means to experience the themes of those planets in that sign. So in this case, Mercury conjunct Mars means that Mercury, our planet that deals with communications and speaking and self-expression, is given a little high five, a little butt slap to Mars in Libra. Mars, which has to do with our autonomy and our personal power and taking matters into our own hands. So I think this is an important point for the Mercury retrograde, because I believe Mercury and Mars will conjoin again in Scorpio, I think next month, if not later this month. Whenever Mercury is retrograde, it will turn back around and find Mars again in Scorpio, and then I think they will conjoin again in Scorpio later, if I'm not mistaken. So Mercury and Mars doing a little dance in Libra. And then as far as Libra goes, I was Mercury buying an inflatable frog suit. Yeah. Yeah. You've noticed lots of protests are going on. I believe the biggest No Kings protest just happened yesterday, or it happened today. I don't know. It happened sometime recently. There's some other legal stuff going on. Haven't been keeping up too much with the specifics of all the politics, but hey, April. Also, hello to Deb and Hart and everybody in the chat. Good morning, good afternoon. I was writing a Patreon post. I'm writing a couple Patreon posts, actually. And the first things that I wrote about in one post was about cardinal signs. And then in the current one, it's supposed to be a Mercury retrograde post. We'll see how it goes. But I was writing about Mercury in Libra and how one of Mercury in Libra's big skills is the ability to speak to common values and principles and concepts, speaking to a bunch of different people's perspectives and finding the things that are in common between all of them. So there's a lot of having consideration for other people's perspectives, consideration for social contracts and agreements, and being able to manage, or rather being able to, I guess being able to control to some extent people's ability to receive your message by speaking to them in a way that is going to be well received. Mercury's really good at that stuff. I think Mercury with Mars, as far as this conjunction goes, makes it a little bit difficult to do that. Well, it may and it may not actually. It may just inspire you to speak up more, maybe in ways that you have not felt motivated as much. It can also create conflicts. And by create conflicts, I mean maybe necessary conflicts. Like if you need to air some shit out with somebody, or if there's been an elephant in the room for a while, Mars can come by, or rather, Mercury can pull up to Mars and say, hey, we should talk about this thing, this silent, passive aggressive beef that we've been having. Maybe we just put it all out there in a way that everybody is able to actually talk about. It could also increase passive aggression, I would imagine. So if you feel like you're dancing around the subject, beating around the bush, or trying to say what you need to say without directly saying it, there could also be a little bit of that. But Mercury and Mars, when they get together, they like to start shit sometimes. They like to stir some shit up. So keep that in mind. So we will call on the elevated and healed ancestors and spirits on this day to give us some insight into our new moon in Libra this week. 4 degrees Libra. Oops. Wrapping up some stories from earlier this year. Our full moon that would have been back in probably April or May. And the any full moon that would have happened earlier this year. And kicking off a new storyline, if you will, moving forward. So we're wandering around in the dark a little bit, and we would love some insight, some guidance, just some things to notice and ways to move forward, especially with Mercury getting ready to enter the sign where it's going to station retrograde. So yeah, we do have a bit of a stellium for this new moon with Mars, Mercury, the Sun, and the Moon. All right, let's see. What do we have here? Card on the bottom for today is Judgment. There's that word. Love to see Judgment for a full moon in Libra. Libra often representing judgment in terms of I'm thinking of justice actually. So never mind. But yeah, Judgment is our card on the bottom. Oops. This is like a Revelations card sometimes. Usually I've seen it depicted as like the rapture. Judgment Day. All right, so we have Judgment on the bottom. Our next card is the 8 of Coins or 8 of Pentacles. I'll show you guys these in just a moment. 2 of Baskets or 2 of Cups. I love that card. One of my faves. And then Temperance. We're seeing Temperance again. I think we had that on a poll that we did recently as well. Cool. All right, Judgment on the bottom. 8 of Coins. 8 of Pentacles. Look at that. Beautiful card. 2 of Baskets, also known as 2 of Cups. Very cute, very cute. And our card in the solution position, the way forward, Temperance. Okay. So the Judgment card, Judgment, like I said, the idea behind Judgment is something about Judgment Day. I've also heard this card described as if I knew then what I know now, like what would I do differently? So there's something to be said for kind of weighing out. I say weighing out. There's something to be said about ignorance. I think there's something about ignorance and regret or remorse or guilt sometimes that comes up with this card because there is a bit of regret. There can be a bit of regret for previous actions or previous decisions. And if it's not like remorse necessarily or guilt than it is just wishing you had done something differently or wishing you had known wishing that you would have known something that maybe you didn't know at the time so that you could make a different decision. Let me move this out the way. So I say ignorance because ignorance in a lot of cases is just like you can't know what you don't know. It's a very Saturn theme to me. And so whenever you're moving out of ignorance, you're just moving with the information that you have at that time. And then as time goes on, you gain more information, you gain more knowledge, then the past starts to look a little bit different because you're like, oh man, like I know I was acting out of what I knew at the time, but if I had known this information, if I had known this context, if I had known all this other stuff, like this whole situation could have turned out differently. So that's what judgment makes me think of. And if that is meant to represent Saturn, and we have Saturn in Pisces right now, we know that that placement is struggling with a lack of context or a lack of information sometimes, and how not knowing and uncertainty can feel a little bit dangerous, but we still have to find a way to move forward and grow and change with the information as we move. So thinking about that for judgment on the bottom. It also makes sense. I know we're talking about the new moon in Libra, but it does also make sense for Libra in the sense that whenever you are dealing with Libra transits, um, I often talk about, well, maybe I haven't said it in this way, but what just came to me was this idea of looking before you leap, assessing all of the potential outcomes and consequences, and creating the strategy that ideally does the least amount of harm, at least in your mind, what seems like it would do the least amount of harm, and trying to account for that before jumping into a situation. And that would kind of make sense too, since Venus is still in Virgo. We know Venus and Virgo is all about assessing the consequences. Wait, Venus is still in Virgo, huh? I was realizing earlier that I've kind of slept on that transit. The moon is in Virgo right now too, so yeah, something about assessing risks, assessing consequences, and the ignorance of not knowing in a moment and having to just make a decision to move forward anyway with judgment. We'll circle back to that and see how that pans out as we talk about the rest of these cards here. So our first card that kind of defines the situation a little bit more is Eight of Coins. Eight of Coins or Eight of Pentacles. I haven't thought about this card in a while. Let me look at it. We see a person sitting at a table and looking over what might be shells or stones of some sort. And I believe Eight of Coins, I mean, this could be a project that she's working on as well. There's something about devotion to, I was going to say devotion to a craft or just devotion to a project. I wonder why devotion is coming up. Devotion to a craft or project, it's like really taking your time and concentrating on something for an extended amount of time, or putting a lot of mental or emotional or creative energy into something that you really care about and wanting it to be sustainable. I haven't pulled this card very often. Let me see what the book says about it too. Eight of Coins. Education and employment are some of the traits. So it says, I'll read it to you guys. Hold it up. A woman sits at a table engaging in a variety of forms of divination. Her passion and soul mission have led her to work on strengthening her connections to her ancestors and their wisdom and knowledge. This card speaks to the energy of giving your all. The woman is cultivating her divination abilities, seeing how her gifts can help her as a light worker who intends to improve the lives of others. Hey, Eric. Each time she does the same task with regularity and unwavering attention, she moves towards a new level of mastery. Paying meticulous attention to every detail, she finds her work profoundly productive and satisfying. Interesting to see that when I was just talking about Venus being in Virgo, and she's talking about being meticulous and attention to detail. The Eight of Coins is a reminder to carve out time to hone your skills and talents. It is important to move beyond your comfort zone and the limitations you have set for yourself in order to evolve and see your true capabilities. Hey, Sherry. Know that any energy, time, and heart you invest in your development will be worth your while. So, we're talking about production and routine, making money through skilled labor, mastery and skill development, and perfectionism, incompetence, shortcuts, suppression, lack of inspiration, and ambition. So, it's suggesting to have a personal dance party. So, yeah, very Virgo card. It's funny. I really trying to stay on topic. Try not to jump around too much in my mind, but there's a lot happening. So yeah, Eight of Coins. We're talking about honing your skills, honing your craft, devoting a lot of time and energy to mastery and getting really good at something that um maybe you're already kind of good at, but spending more time and energy on it. Devotion, perfectionism. Excuse me. And doing so in a very practical, regimented way. Okay. So then Two of Baskets here in the middle is somewhat of an obstacle or a challenge to overcome. Two of Baskets is typically known as like a relational card. It's about giving and receiving, reciprocating energy. Hey, Sloan. Giving, receiving, and reciprocating energy. There's compatibility in this card. There's, I would even say, compliance, cooperation in this card. Matching that energy, mirroring effort. So, balance. Hate talking about Libra and using the word balance because that's what everybody does. But I think what we're really talking about here is reciprocation and harmony. Harmony often being a better word than balance. It's there's a level of cooperation with Libra with this two of cards in this case, two of cards, two of cups in this case, that it's like everything is just kind of moving synergistically and proportionally with all the people involved. So if this is the thing to overcome, then maybe there's an imbalance. Maybe there's feeling like you're giving more than you're actually getting back. Maybe it's feeling like you do more for others than they do for you, or at the very least that you're just not getting what you're putting out back from the people that you're putting it out with. I already feel like I kind of know where this is going, but I want something a little bit more specific. So temperance then here in the final position. I think we've talked about temperance before as tolerance the last time that we talked about it. And tolerance, not saying that you put up with anything, but there's with tolerance, I think especially in this climate that we're in with a bunch of water signs, this astro climate that we're in with a bunch of water signs, temperance in this case and tolerance in this case is being learning how to tolerate discomfort. And the discomfort might be um well, I'm gonna pause there. Tolerating discomfort, or rather doing something with the energy of discomfort as it arises instead of not using it. So if we put all this together, what does this mean? I'm going to start with a story because I don't know if it's relevant, but maybe it is. I went for a walk this morning with my doggy and I was listening to More Than Words by Stan Tatkin and somebody else. And it's a book about relationships. And I didn't get too far into it, but the premise of the book is that a lot of times we try to substitute communication for connection. And that made me think about air versus water in astrology. And I think this Libra stuff versus this Cancer stuff, especially right now, and with this Mercury retrograde, also Scorpio stuff versus Libra stuff. So water and air, connection versus communication. Immediately I thought of the song More Than Words. You too? Interesting. Okay, so the premise of the book is that, couples, relationships, which I think could be relevant to the Two of Cups and also just relevant to Libra in general, usually a very relational sign, Venus ruled sign. With relationships, one of the main things that people complain about a lot is communication. Like, oh, if we could just learn how to communicate better, we would probably have less conflict. If we could just learn how to communicate better, then everything would be all right. Our relationship would be fine. We just aren't very good at communicating. And what's interesting about humans and about the way that our minds and our bodies and nervous systems work is that sometimes words really just are not enough. Words are not going to do what we need them to do all the time. So discussions, learning how to just like speak words better to each other only goes so far. What we often need that we don't get or that we deprioritize, at least in this culture, is connection. And connection is often nonverbal. So connection. We just started this live with what it means to sit with a feeling, right? That would be a really good example of connection and connecting with yourself with and attuning to your own body and nervous system. Sitting with a feeling, sitting with someone else's feelings, which usually like we said is just feeling the sensation of the feeling, maybe identifying or naming the feeling, which is still a little bit more air but still helpful in terms of when you know what a feeling is, you're able to connect with that aspect of yourself or that part of yourself that's feeling that feeling. And from that place, we're able to have more of a deeper, a more authentic, and a more intimate connection with other people. So communication, on the other hand, I think how do I want to say this? I think whenever it comes to communication versus connection, communication often feels like arguments or debates or challenges sometimes. It's like looking at it, it's like taking a situation and stepping outside of it to view it from this more objective place. And I think the process of stepping outside of the situation to view it more objectively is where the disconnection happens. Because you're no longer in the feeling space with the other person or people involved. You're now in this more intellectual, rational place of kind of surveying the situation and speaking out loud to it. And I think doing that, a lot of times we do that if I'm thinking about Libra and air signs. A lot of the reasons why we do that is because of the discomfort of how do I want to say that? I guess the discomfort of all of the feelings, right? Because feelings, you can't really control your feelings. They just happen. They respond and they react to the situation that you're in. And so if you are trying to resolve a conflict with somebody, the easiest thing to do is it feels like, okay, everybody put your thinking caps on, everybody be more rational, everybody be more objective. Let's talk about this situation itself and talk about each aspect, like break it down into these smaller details and then figure out like what you did and what I did and how we both contributed to this issue. And there's some merit to that. But again, a lot of the reason why we kind of jump into doing that, and even a lot of the reason why people talk about self regulation the way that they do, is this avoidance of feeling, you know? So I think learning to learning to sit with our own and with other people's feelings is a form of intimacy that we don't get to practice very much if this card is about practicing. It is a skill that has to be worked on, and he was actually saying this in the book. It's a skill that has to be worked on just like any other thing that we practice, just like playing an instrument, just like doing math, just like anything else. It's a skill that you have to actually sit and practice, but in order to practice it, you have to get more comfortable with the discomfort of somebody else's feelings. And that's where I think Scorpio comes in. I don't know if y'all have thought about Scorpio in this way. I definitely haven't, but as I was listening to this book, I was thinking about Mars and Scorpio itself. Mars at home in the sign of Scorpio and how the function of Mars is to disconnect, right? It's to disconnect, it's to separate, it's to sever, it's to go somewhere else and move on. So Mars in a water sign, and that water sign being Scorpio, is about emotional disconnection. Because a lot of times, what Scorpio does, especially Mars in Scorpio, is when their own feelings or someone else's feelings get to be too much, whatever that means, too uncomfortable, or just, or rather, I take that back. So it's not about discomfort for Scorpio. If Scorpio is not allowed to feel their authentic feelings in a moment, or if they are being shamed or judged for their authentic feelings in a moment, instead of hiding that feeling, since Scorpio can't hide its feelings, Scorpio will remove itself. It will emotionally disconnect from other people to preserve its own sense of authenticity and self-respect, basically. Hey Richie, thank you. Yes, fade and cut. I'm real short here right now. So if we think about the purpose of Mars and Scorpio being to emotionally disconnect from people in order to preserve its life, its body, its own emotional authenticity, then it makes sense that this is something that Libra is probably really uncomfortable with, because Libra's function is to preserve the relationship, to keep people together, and to magnify commonalities, and to connect through shared, again, ideas, values, morals, and I would even say, to some extent, shared feelings. I know Libra is not really about feelings, but Libra people, I'm gonna drag y'all a little bit, but I think I think I've noticed for Libra in transit as well, that when everyone doesn't, well, maybe I'll say it like this. Hold on, let me slow down. People pleasing always comes up during Libra transits. So this is actually not about Libra people specifically. This is just about people pleasing in general. Very strong Venusian trait, but people pleasing, fawn response, whatever you want to call it, even freeze response. The whole purpose of that strategy and that skill in relationships is to manage the other person's emotions, for lack of a better way to put it. And that's not just for superficial reasons, but it's like, if you grew up in an abusive household, for example, or if you grow up around parents that are maybe not emotionally mature, then keeping them happy at whatever cost, and prioritizing how they feel, and prioritizing just peace, this idea of peace in general, is much easier on you and your nervous system than it is to do the Scorpio thing, where you are going to feel however you feel and can't hide it, and it's going to disrupt the peace for everybody. Does that make sense? So the whole Libra of it all is that, like, yeah, sometimes it's not about my feelings. Sometimes there's bigger fish to fry, and we need to focus on that. We need to focus on keeping this person chill, because if we don't, they're going to fly off the handle, and that's not good for anybody. So there's that aspect of people pleasing. Um, and there's also, yeah, exactly. And it usually falls on an eldest sister as well, which is so unfortunate. Um, I'm sure there's some patriarchy, misogyny wrapped up in that as well. But so that Libra would rather say, okay, everybody, let's like come to some kind of a compromise or some kind of solution that benefits everybody. And let's not do that in an emotionally heated way. Whereas Scorpio, well, Libra's gonna say that in order to keep everybody together in this room, whereas Scorpio is gonna say, "Fuck all y'all, I'm gonna do me," because that's what Mars does. Mars does me and goes and kind of carves out their own path, and then a lot of times other people end up following Mars. Mars tends to lead in that sense, but Venus is more concerned with keeping everyone together. So Scorpio's gonna pick up that bag and leave. Exactly. Uh, so when I'm looking at this spread, and I'm looking at judgment as the context, for this new moon, and if I had known then what I know now, Let me see what else the book says about judgment. A spiritual guardian blows a horn, signaling danger after seeing two individuals struggling to stay afloat. Judgment is a call to step into our soul mission. It's time to transition from one state to another, becoming fully awake. The Judgment card speaks of painful and challenging times. Struggles are rarely appreciated in their present moment. The card asks us to cleanse, purge, and renew in order to transcend. When the Judgment card is pulled, it's time to consider the following. Are you able to ask for help? Do you hear your higher self calling? How can you absolve the shame and guilt you may be carrying and make amends? It speaks to rebirth, awakening, inner calling, absolution, self evaluation, composure, renewal, forgiveness. It also speaks about inner criticism, false accusations, ignored intuition, self doubt, cycling karmic lessons, malicious gossip, blindness, and indecisiveness. The affirmation for this is I value my energy, walking away from people, places, and situations that disempower me. Okay. So that actually fits really well with temperance. That fits really well with temperance. I need my brain to do the thing where it pulls all of this together. It's probably more obvious to y'all than it is to me right now. um this new moon, this Mercury Mars conjunction, and Mercury probably already in its retrograde shadow between Libra and Scorpio. To me, the message seems to become increasingly clear that we're not going to words. Really, what it made me think of is that the law is not enough. The law is not enough. It's like social contracts are not enough. The social contract, in fact, has changed anyway, so you can't really rely on that as much as we used to. The way that we engage with each other in general has changed. I feel like we've talked about this before, maybe earlier this year, I guess, but in a way, like connection, authentic connection is a skill, or rather, authentic connection requires the skill of discomfort in order to maintain a relationship. What did I just say? Connection is a skill that requires a tolerance for discomfort in order to maintain a relationship. But what does judgment have to do with that? Is judgment just what what's interesting is that the way that this spread is laid out, judgment is right above two of baskets, and they were talking about those two people at the bottom like drowning or whatever. What did it say? They were drowning. What did it just say? I forgot already. Two individuals struggling to stay afloat. And it's time to transition from one state to another. Decisions and self assessment, painful and challenging times, struggles are rarely appreciated in their present moment. Yeah, maybe discernment about what relationships to preserve. I think that's true. Discernment about what relationships to preserve. I do think that's true. Venus is in Virgo. I abandoned the oldest daughter role and walked away and have been working on not feeling guilty about it as that role actively was harming me. I feel like it's right in front of my face staring at me and I'm not getting the download. But I'm allowing space for it to come forward, practicing what I preach. I just keep, I guess, just in general, the thing that's been on my mind a lot with this season, the air and the water, and the difference between Scorpio and Libra, and the totally different functions that they preserve. And at the same time, if you follow the zodiac, like you have to Libra before you can Scorpio. And I've just been trying to think about what that means. And I do think at the end of the day, what it comes back to is because we are a society, I think I already said this, because we're a society that devalues emotional authenticity and emotional intimacy and just feelings in general, that until we have to decenter some things. I was going to say until we learn how to tolerate that discomfort, the discomfort of difference, it's just hard to maintain a relationship. It's like a paradox. Closeness means friction. So I guess then, if you have to Libra before you can Scorpio, part of the gift of air is the ability to decenter your own feelings. Part of the gift of air is to have some separation between the intensity of your own emotions and other people's emotions. We have to decenter ourselves to some extent to figure out what we have in common. I mean, that is true. That is true. That is what Libra does. Yeah, I guess I always go back to the story of my mom being pregnant with me and stopping my dad from hitting his dad. He deserved it. And that truly is the role I've played in my family of being the peacekeeper. Mm-hmm. We have to decenter ourselves to some extent to figure out what we have in common. So, what would be the purpose? I think the retrograde of it all. I think the retrograde of it all, even though this is supposed to be a new moon reading, you just can't separate all these things together. The retrograde of it all is that we will have the moment of feeling our own feelings, but then we're still going to have to go back in Libra first, which means to, okay, well, I know how I feel, but what's going on with everyone else? With judgment, it's like, okay, maybe there is a perspective, there is something that I haven't considered, there is something that I just didn't know before, that now I'm finding out how somebody else was feeling, what somebody else was thinking, what somebody else was going through in a moment of conflict that maybe I made some assumptions about, and that wasn't the full story, that wasn't the full truth. So in order to preserve this relationship, like, yes, I need to honor my own authentic feelings and communicate those to somebody else, but I also have to consider the fact that this other person is bringing a context and a perspective and whatever else that I'm not aware of, and we might have something in common here, maybe more than we have something not in common. I think we talked about this last week. But that actually feels very true, and that actually feels very uncomfortable, again, during a time where we've been so polarized. So the 2 of Cups then, being the card in the center, the 2 of Cups being about reciprocity and being about I would even say in this context, like, turn taking, making space for your feelings, making space for my feelings. It's like we need to be doing this not just for other people. So not just in the you playing therapist for everybody else or you having grace for everybody else and nobody having it for you. It's like in some ways, yes, you can only put forward what and it is a little bit transactional. I think this is going to be one of those situations where it needs to be transactional so that you're not overgiving, right? Or overdoing whatever it is. We're talking about Jupiter being in Cancer now. 2 baskets, give what you receive. So if you are in, for example, then if you're in a dynamic with someone where it feels like they're taking up all the emotional space, that means you have to not only step forward and take up more emotional space, but you also kind of got to let them know, well, you take up more emotional space yourself, and they need to also learn how to listen, right? If you are the person who is constantly, I don't know, constantly initiating, then maybe you sit back a little bit, let somebody else step forward. If you are the person who is constantly like, I don't know, there's also something about resentment that comes up with Libra placements, I think, because it is a cardinal sign. It does initiate things and take action in its own way to again preserve the relationship. So if it's starting to feel like a resentment that you're the person who's always doing that, then the other person needs to step forward. But I think the gist of this is that, and maybe it's this, maybe it is that taking up emotional space is a practice. Taking up emotional space is a practice, and also giving emotional space is a practice as well. And the judgment of it all being like, yeah, maybe there are just some things that you haven't considered, that you didn't consider this first time around or 6 months ago or whatever it was that now you're having to consider. Um, this came up for me because of a conversation I was having about atonal music having no center but being a form of musical therapy. Oh, it serves everyone involved when you think of it that way. I agree. I've been thinking about how I have no planets in mutable signs and what that means for my neurodivergent ass. Hmm. Can you tell me more about this, Eric? I'm curious. Atonal music having no center but being a form of musical therapy, and how that relates to decentering ourselves to some extent to figure out what we have in common. I guess I was just talking about harmony as well. I love music. I need a real card reader in the room to tell me what this means. That's what we do it all for, right? The regulating and the communicating and whatever other skills, relational skills that we try to develop. We do that to preserve the relationship, or we do it to um what did I just say? I lost my train of thought. I saw y'all's chat. Let me just read what it says. Atonal music itches my brain in a good way. I saw harmony in big ass letters on my way home from rehearsal. Explanation pending. Okay. I forgot what I just said. Oh, skill building. Yeah, we build all of these skills in order to, yeah, I guess that's true. So we're talking about decentering ourselves being the prerequisite to the emotional disconnection that happens with Scorpio. Then it kind of goes back to what we were saying last time about like other people's feelings not being a statement about you. I think that goes both ways, right? It goes that way in terms of making other people the problem and also making yourself the problem whenever it's not really that black and white. I think it also speaks to how much more receptive you become to disconnection or even disharmony, like a little bit more openness to it whenever you're able to not make it about you. That is the skill of Libra. I think it's something I get frustrated about personally for people with Libra, because I'm the guy, the way my chart's set up, I want people to be able to take up emotional space and to advocate for themselves and their needs and all of that. But the whole point of Libra is that sometimes it's not about me. Sometimes it is about, sometimes it's not just about me, I'll say. Sometimes it's not just about you. Sometimes there are multiple people involved and there's lots of different wheels turning and you're trying to get them all to move at the same way. So part of that process, or maybe rather the retrograde comes in when it's like you don't have to lose yourself in that process. Like you don't have to lose connection with your own emotional reality in order to find harmony with other people. You don't have to lose touch with your own emotions and your own experience in order to validate somebody else's. You don't have to lose touch with your own feelings and emotions and experiences in order to find what's shared between you and other people. Maybe it just looks differently on the outside. Word to Scorpio again. And having tolerance for that difference is what ends up preserving connection in at the end of it all anyway. So there's something about all that. Libra definitely takes things to the extreme sometimes and we end up annihilating ourselves. Right. I think the point is to not do that. Right? I think the point is to use all of the skills of Libra, and especially Mercury in Libra, to speak to what is shared, what is relatable, and to also be able to identify other perspectives besides your own. And that doesn't mean that you have to completely lose yours in the process. It's being able to hold space for both. That's literally what this card means, holding two things at the same time. That card and this card, holding two things at the same time. But you have to practice that. That's a skill that has to be worked on. And the practice is in, like we said, sitting with your own feelings in the beginning, sitting with other people's feelings, and the practice of not like shitting on yourself and your own ideas and your own perspective and shrinking yourself in order to do that. Like you can have both. I think that's what it is, right? I keep thinking of trying to learn the dance meme for "You Get What You Give" with Jason Sudeikis. Yeah, yeah. I think that's it. I think I'm maybe deeping it too much, but we've gotten so bad at tolerating discomfort that we resort to everything needing to be black and white, right or wrong, because we don't have tolerance for like nuance, the discomfort of nuance, this discomfort for disagreement. And like we've made everyone's opinions be facts at this point, that hearing somebody else's opinion feels like a threat to your life and your body, which sometimes it is, right? Especially if we're talking about people in power. But if we're just talking about you and me, like I'll say for myself, and then I'm gonna wrap this up. Like when I am consuming discourse on Twitter, I have to remind myself that just because other people have different opinions, and this is me as a Gemini, just because other people have different opinions doesn't mean that I'm wrong. Like, just because other people maybe have a rationale that they are seeing and justifying things through, like a lens that they are seeing and justifying everything through that makes sense for them, doesn't mean that my perspective is wrong and incorrect just because it is discordant or disharmonious with something that somebody else is saying. It may be the case that both of us are saying the same thing in different words. And the thing, I didn't want to talk about this, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. The thing that I'm thinking about is this video that was circulating on Twitter and on TikTok. That is what I assume to be a straight man. He may be a bi man. I don't know. A straight man who was previously kind of like alternative looking because he had locks and different piercings and all this other stuff. And he was talking about dating bisexual women or just in general dating queer women, whether that's queer in sexuality or just queer in politics. And how once he got just a basic haircut that a lot of straight men would have, then he starts dating straight women and starts having the experience of what it's like to date cishet women and all of the gender norms and standards and cis heteronormativity in general that they uphold, and him having to, and him realizing that in dating those women which he hasn't dated straight cishet women in a real long time, was having this experience of like, you know, all the bullshit, all the gender wars, all that stuff that cishet people go through. And a lot of people heard that conversation, and what they got from it was that he's shitting on cishet women, but that he's also potentially misogynistic. He's pitting women against each other and all this other stuff, which I guess if you go into either that guy or some other people who were talking about, some other cishet men who were talking about this concept, if you go into their personal individual histories, you're going to find shitty things about them because men and because patriarchy. And I feel like personally, especially since transitioning and dealing with my own grievances with men and maleness, like it's easy for me to automatically attribute things to patriarchy because I'm a systems thinker. I think about systemic injustices primarily as the reason why people behave the way they behave. But a lot of people don't do this. And a lot of people will also use systemic stuff as a way to evade accountability themselves. And I just feel like I say all of that to say people were taking this one guy's experience and him, the way that he communicated it, as being this like universal truth, when really you can take bits and pieces from somebody else's experience and relate to it. That's what I was doing. I don't relate 100% to what that man was saying. I don't relate 100% to men in general, but I can understand why men feel like women are holding them to a particular standard when really it's men and women have internalized patriarchy. But you kind of have to do you have to do a little bit of putting your own ego and your own emotional reactiveness aside to get to that conclusion, because it's very easy to turn that conversation into, well, this is just another example of men hating women. It's like, not exactly, because there are plenty of women, especially cishet women, who are biphobic and homophobic towards like bisexual men. That conversation comes up a lot. You hate to see it, you hate to hear about it, but a lot of times, a lot of cishet women will bring to the conversation this idea of like, they don't want men who are soft. They don't want men who have sex with other men. They don't want men who, I don't know. There's just a whole bunch of like those same patriarchal standards that women then will internalize. And then if a man does not meet the patriarchal standard, then he's less of a man. But then in the same breath will complain about having to hold themselves to different patriarchal standards of having to look a certain way and having to act a certain way and be submissive and do this and do that. It's like, everybody get more queer immediately. Okay? Everybody get more queer immediately, even if it's just politically. You have to get those things out of yourself and your own spirit before you can complain about somebody else embodying it, right? And so anyway, I bring all of that up to say my experience of reading that discourse is like, look, people are trying to point to something that a lot of people do actually have in common, but depending on the messenger and depending on the way the conversation is phrased, like people can't hear that conversation. And it's hard to have that conversation. It's the same thing when trans men are trying to talk about what it's like to be a trans man, and people don't want to hear it because all they see is a man talking and don't want to consider all the nuances of that person's identity and personhood and experience. It's not to say that that experience is 100% what happens all the time and that person in particular holds all the truths of the universe. No. But it is true that you listen to any cishet people right now in the dating world talk about what it's like to try and date right now, it's just like a bunch of really restrictive rules and really restrictive ideologies and really restrictive just ideas of what a man and what a woman is. And then you got queer people on the side saying like, hey, what if y'all didn't do that? What if y'all didn't do that to each other? And yes, I know it is up to men to deconstruct patriarchy, but men can't deconstruct patriarchy if women are holding them to patriarchal standards. Like it goes both ways. Controversial opinion, I know, controversial, but I'm just saying, as someone who is a non-traditional man, like I hear it all the time. It's hard. It goes both ways. And so that's whenever I'm talking about like we have to have the tolerance for hearing things that we may not immediately agree with in order to find the thing that we have in common, which is that everybody's a victim to patriarchy, everybody's a victim to misogyny, everybody's a victim to homophobia, everybody's a victim to sexism, right? Like exactly. Thank you, Sherry. Most of the aphobia I've experienced was from cishet women. It is what it is. It's not to say that one is more dangerous or violent than the other, but it is to say that if we're going to talk about the systems, then we have to acknowledge how all of us contribute to some extent to the system. And what I mean by that is whenever I'm talking about, okay, this was the other thing I was going to say, and then I'll shut up. in this whole conversation, right? Another thought I was having on my walk was that yes, systemic issues, always systemic issues, always capitalism, always patriarchy, always ableism, always racism, always the isms. The isms always exist, and there are systems built on these isms. And then we, as people, to live in a functioning society, Libra, to live in a functioning society, all to some extent have to agree and cooperate with these isms, because the system that holds that we operate within is based on these isms. So to some extent, all of us are kind of doing a little bit of that somewhere, somehow, are doing a little bit of these things because the system itself functions off of that. So all of us individual cogs in the machine of the system got to do a little bit of the isms to survive the system. What we can do, and what Leo and Aquarius, I think, help us do in the meantime, is to decolonize and to uninternalize, I guess, de-internalize, I don't know, to not internalize those isms in the meantime while we are working towards liberation, whatever that looks like. And that looks like us not doing it to each other on the interpersonal level. I feel like it's really annoying. It's really shitty. It's really fucked up. But if we're talking about not totally abandoning ourselves, like you're not going to be able to be 100% authentic all the time. And I know for Scorpio, this is where a lot of like Scorpio and Taurus stuff comes in for me. Like in an ideal world, yes, you would be able to, I'll use myself as an example. In an ideal world, I would be able to go outside and still have breasts and not have a penis and go outside and still be considered a man. Still be able to walk around shirtless if I were to have top surgery scars, and it wouldn't have to mean I'm an abomination or whatever the fuck. Like I could just go outside and visibly be physically different from what people expect to see from a man, and that be okay, and my life not be in danger. However, because of the world and the systems and the isms that I currently live in, I have to do things like tape my chest. I have to do things like, I don't know, figure out ways to go to the bathroom and not visibly be trans. That's the Taurus of it all. The Taurus of it all is sometimes you have to put a mask on. Sometimes you have to conceal your differences. Sometimes you have to kind of blend in and you have to do a little patriarchy and you have to do a little this and that just to survive the day, and know deep down that that is not who I am, and that is not what I want for myself, and that's not what I want for other people, and that's not a standard that I'm going to say other trans men have to hold themselves up to. All trans men don't pass. All trans people don't pass. It just be like that sometimes. And I also recognize that a lot of us are going to try to pass to the best of our ability simply to avoid harm, right? Two very different things that you have to hold at once. That's really uncomfortable at the end of the day, because I don't want to uphold patriarchy. I don't want to uphold whatever. And I'm still going to go to the gym because I want to be more muscular, because that makes me feel more masculine. Like, you know, so it's uncomfortable, and it's something that all of us kind of do a little bit to survive out in the world that is trying to oppress us. But with each other in the space of this live that we're on, or in conversations, if you were to come and speak to me, that doesn't have to exist there. We don't have to gender role our way through conversations. We don't have to gender role our way through our relationships on the one-to-one level. We can let all of that shit go. And I think that's the thing that people don't realize that they can do. You feel me? Like, people want to be upset about bisexual women dating men because it looks like they're in a cishet passing relationship. And systemically, that is true. Systemically, it does look like a man and a woman, and then you get privileges based on having a heteronormative looking relationship. But within that relationship, okay, she might be pegging him. And that's nobody else's business but theirs. Within their relationship, they might be polyamorous and he might be fucking other dudes. Cool, whatever. Like, two things exist at once. I hope this is making sense and doesn't just sound like me saying a bunch of random things that don't go together. But the point of all of this is that you don't have to internalize these ideas in order to be in relationship with other people. And that takes us back to this whole thing over here, where you kind of got to be able to tolerate a little bit of discomfort. You got to be able to tolerate a little bit of something not immediately. How did I get here? You don't have to tolerate something immediately. You have to be able to tolerate something not immediately making sense to you in your mind, with your background and with your knowledge, because sometimes there's just some things that you don't know yet, some things you haven't considered yet, some things you haven't seen yet. And it is a skill to be able to sit with two things at once, two truths at once. Oh, God, it took us forever to get here, but we got here. Have to be able to hold multiple truths at once. Have to be able to decenter your own bias and your own opinion and your own everything. Have to be able to decenter it, not discount it, not dismiss it, not totally disregard it, but to decenter it. So decenter as in it's right here for you, but when in relationship with other people, you just need to put it over here. So instead of it being everybody revolving around this circle of your truth and your idea and your perspective, it's putting yours into the rotation with everybody else's. And then every now and then we'll put this one in the center, and then we'll put this one in the center, and then we'll put this one in the center and take one out, and they get to revolve in balance, in harmony with one another, in the same way that I was going to say in the same way that that electrons hover around a nucleus, but that's not actually what I mean. So I take that back. But yeah, anyway. Thank y'all for helping me. You guys in the chat, Eric, Dr. Deb, like, you guys really helped me get there, because I was struggling. I went on a little tangent to bring it all home, but yeah. Let me see what y'all are saying in the chat. It's a team, it's a collaborative effort. Thank you guys so much for supporting this, because I had to go around. The conflation with the system and an individual is so hard to navigate. And it is. It's very hard to navigate. But the truth is, people participate in the system. People make up the system. And maybe we can't change everything from the larger political sense in terms of, what Trump and them are doing right now, and Republicans and Democrats that run the country. But culturally, what's acceptable as far as our social contract goes, Libra again, we do have the power to change those things by the conversations we have with each other, by what we're talking about on our podcasts and our YouTube channels. Like, we do have collective power in that sense to change the culture. But that's not going to happen if we are constantly internalizing all this bullshit and deciding that it's true. No, we do. Yes, we do have to survive a system, and maybe that's really what it's all about. Maybe that's really what this retrograde shit is all about. Um, I have to think about this and then talk about it again next week, because I feel like what I started talking about and where we ended up being a little bit different, but we got there. The point is that we arrived at the conclusion in general. Yeah. Because it's the same thing whenever we talk about masking, like wearing a mask for COVID, and people are always like, it doesn't make sense to mask if everybody else isn't going to do it. First of all, not true. Hello. Second of all, like, we don't have to wait for the government, or some larger authority figure to tell us to protect ourselves. We don't have to wait for that. Yes, it is inconvenient if I'm the only person in the room and all I have access to is a surgical mask and nobody else is masking. Like, that is not going to fully protect me as much as I would like for it to do. But if that's all I have access to, and I wear that thing, it's still better than nothing. And when it does come to wearing an N95, like, yes, there is the inconvenience of restricted movement in general, right? Just the inconvenience of having to wear a mask and not being able to eat or drink or whatever else. There are drawbacks, yes, but um I'm still I don't need to wait for the government to tell me to wear a mask if I know that wearing a mask is going to keep me from getting sick. And me not getting sick means I have more access to a whole lot of things, right? But if everybody is just kind of looking around and being like, well, nobody else is wearing a mask, so I'm not going to do it, even though I know it's going to help me, and just blame it on being a systemic issue, like, why would I do that? Why would I do that if I know at the end of the day that it's helping me to not do what everybody else is doing? And then by me not doing what everybody else is doing, more people will see me and be like, oh, well, he's wearing a mask. Like here's the thing with Scorpio. I said I wasn't going to be on here, and now I'm on here that long. Here's the thing with Scorpio, and with Mars actually being the trendsetter and Venus being the trend follower. I'm gonna bring this goodie back. Is that if I, a Scorpio, and I am, wear a mask, and me wearing a mask looks like to other people, let's say, oh, he's anxious about illness. I am anxious about illness, actually. I think that's a fine and normal thing to be anxious about. Oh, he's trying to, like, he must be a little bit neurotic. He must be this, he must be that. All these judgments. And for me, I'm kind of like, yes, I am. So I wear a mask in public so that I don't get sick. Maybe y'all think I'm a little weird. You think I'm a little quirky. All right. You think I'm whatever. But at the end of the day, I'm not getting sick. And if I am getting sick, my viral load is super duper low. Right? So cool. Maybe other people are seeing that and they're judging me for it and they're not going to join in. Cool. But there are going to be some people who maybe think about wearing a mask but are too afraid to, because they don't want all of those thoughts that people are thinking about me. They don't want people to think that about them. So they haven't been masking. But then they see me masking and they say, oh, well, that guy's masking, so maybe I can mask. Seems like he's getting through the day just fine. Maybe I get a couple comments here and there of people got something smart to say, which honestly doesn't happen that often. Once in a while, somebody got something smart to say, but for the most part, they don't. So yeah, maybe I look a little weird, but then somebody else sees me and they say, oh, well, I've been thinking about masking. Maybe I should. Maybe it's not so bad because he's doing it, so maybe I can do it. More people mask. Then slowly over time, the culture decides that, hey, maybe if we have this tool here that will keep me from getting sick all the fucking time, like I've been doing once a month, and I put this mask on and now I only get sick twice a year, I think that's a great idea. That's a great investment for me. All because I saw that one guy who saw another guy who saw another guy who saw another guy who saw another guy. Same thing with posting, taking pictures in groups. And this is actually something I will admit that I'm not the best at. I pick and choose moments where if I'm in a group photo, if I'm either going to take my mask down and hold my breath because I want someone to see my face, or if I'm going to wear it. I will admit that I do that. I'm not perfect. But I have noticed for me, if I'm seeing, for example, there's this queer group that lifts weights. And I saw they posted a group photo the other day, and 3 people in that photo were wearing masks, and good masks too. I was like, oh, hey, great to see that that's a mask friendly space. I feel like I can show up there and wear a mask and people aren't going to be fucking weird about it. And there might even be other people there wearing one, right? That's the power that Scorpio can have sometimes. And that I think I would argue Scorpio has most of the time. It's just getting through the discomfort of letting your difference be seen and witnessed by other people and experienced by other people and having an effect on other people. It's really uncomfortable sometimes, but sometimes it just takes that one person who's willing to kind of go against the grain and say how they really feel about something that then allows other people to come forward and say, actually, you're right. I don't like that either. And that's where Libra and Scorpio can work together. But again, I think in terms of having to Scorpio and in terms of having to Leo, wow. In terms of having to Libra is what I'm trying to say before you can Scorpio, you got to be able to talk about it. I think also in the first place, you got to be able to want to connect in order to be changed by other people. So you have to be wanting to see eye to eye on something. The desire and the will to be the same has to be present in the room, I think, before you can actually accept people's differences when it comes to Libra and Scorpio specifically. Okay, get through the rest of these and then get off this call. This is the answer. Nick Walker talks about it regarding neuroqueering, for example. Yes. Sun Ra changed the literal trajectory of jazz because of his atonal approach. Additionally, he used atonal music to soothe folks dealing with narcotics. So there's something about atonal music that has relieving properties for folks struggling with addictions and certain neural responses. He turned this into a healing practice and primarily offered this to folks on the south side of Chicago. And they have an entire archive on his studies here. Oh, that's excellent. That's so good. I'm just eating that up in my brain. Atonal music. I'll have to look into that some more. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. That's so cool. I had no idea that that was a thing. Or maybe I did and just didn't know that that's what it was called, but I like it. Thank you. Compulsory heterosexuality is honestly meant to exhaust us. We need to let it go. I'm just tired of it at this point. Me too. Me too. I'm tired of it. I'm constantly at war with it within myself since transitioning. Like, being a man is so ass, y'all. It's so ass. It's cool when I'm by myself or when I'm with my lover and my friends who love me and see me, and with you guys is cool because I'm like, hey, mostly because for me, gender, since I'm a person who hasn't identified with one gender, because I don't knock people who really do feel like they are whatever gender they were born as. I think that's wonderful and special, and something that people should be allowed to do. I'm not necessarily one of those people who truly believes that we need to abolish gender. I think we need to abolish locking people into one expression of gender. But I think gender is cool. And so I feel like for me, like, being able to be one thing for, most of my life up to this point and now shift into something else is cool as fuck, but it doesn't make me feel like I need to be like, I know there are some trans men who really feel like there are some trans men who get really turfy. I'm gonna just say that, but there are also some trans men who feel very strongly about being a man and being masculine, and I just don't really feel that way. I feel like if this is the spectrum and woman is over here, if we want to put it on a linear spectrum for the sake of this argument, if woman is over here and man is over here, then I'm somewhere like in here where I want to present physically as masculine as possible. I want to feel in my body um as masculine and as male as possible, but my personality, baby, is very non-binary. At the end of the day, my personality and my personhood and the way that I physically move through the world is very himbo soft. Okay, I'm gonna go to the gym and I'm gonna get jacked and I want to be strong and, you know, physically dominant in that sense, but I too would like to live a soft life. Okay, more of a nurturing spirit. All right, soft and sensitive and hold space and hold feelings for other people, or hold, oh my god, Elizabeth, hi. Himbo soft, exactly. We're talking about gender norms and abolishing them so that people can just be themselves and not be so tied or so locked into these patriarchal and misogynistic gender roles that are suffocating my people. So yeah, I just feel like being able to be fluid in my gender personality and presentation at times, but my gender presentation is for the most part pretty masculine, but my personality will always be soft. And I want that for other men, whether that's trans men, bisexual men, cishet men, whoever it is. I want that for other men. Men, I want you guys to be softer, more nurturing, more sensitive, more girly pop sometimes. A little more fluid, less rigid. Like, and to my own point, I saw a woman post, if your boyfriend is at a No Kings rally, that's your girlfriend. Like, with 80,000 likes. 80,000 likes? Hello? What does that even mean? Transgender for everybody. The teen I saw this week asking to draw their experience of gender on 2 pieces of paper, one piece with male-female dichotomy line with arrows and a separate piece of paper saying me. Yeah, he like outside of it completely being like, yeah, I actually don't experience gender the way you guys do, but cool, whatever. They love oh, I can't tell because I can't see your face so well, talking about masks, yes. Okay, the compliance. Talk that shit, yes. Compliance. Yeah, had to throw in compliance and cooperation with Libra. Like, yes, we are coerced, another Libra word, into complying, Libra word. And also, when the state isn't watching, okay? When your corporate overlords aren't watching, when your boss isn't watching, all right? When the cops aren't watching, allegedly, not advocating on this live for anybody to break the law. Just saying, allegedly, when you're not being surveilled by Big Brother, maybe you don't have to cooperate. Maybe you don't have to comply. Maybe you don't have to uphold patriarchy. Okay? Maybe you don't. I'm just saying. Yeah. When I said I would shut up, I knew I wasn't going to shut up because I got something to say. That's me. I start talking and now I got to say things. Illness should be anxiety making, and if people aren't anxious, they live in a fantasy. Yeah, and that's another I don't know if that's also patriarchal. I feel like it is. It's definitely eugenics, but it's like people when they're like, "Oh yeah, I can just like raw dog germs because my immune system's so strong, blah blah blah." It's like, "Well, that's not really how that works, but also just the idea that you should just be able to like the idea that you can just I don't know, the ego, I guess, around the hubris around thinking that Earth, right, and things that are of Earth, like germs and viruses, and bacteria and so on and so forth can't take you out. They do all the time. Hello? Like before modern sanitary practices, people just died real young of like cholera. Okay? And the ableism of like it's just a cold. Like colds take people out all the time. Flu takes people out all the time. And people have compromised immune systems, especially now. I don't have to go on to the soapbox, but people have compromised immune systems now. People have immune dysregulation now. And just because a cold could take them out doesn't make them any less worthy of protection, doesn't make them weak, doesn't make them bad or wrong or whatever else fucking thing you want to project onto it. It's just sometimes people be sick. Damn. Do it got to be a statement about if I'm man enough? Like, fellas, is it gay to catch a cold? What are we talking about? Like, I think, and if you really want to talk about the history of HIV and AIDS, they would tell you it is gay to catch a cold and die from it. But that's the whole problem. That's the whole problem. Sometimes people be sick. And sometimes people just don't want to be sick. And that should be not that big of a deal. Why are you being weird to me? That's how I, as a Scorpio, felt safe to come out to my local LGBTQ plus center and make friends with a mask for mask couple. Yes. I know we went to a thing called Sunday Sessions a couple weekends ago. And it was by Black people for Black and brown people. Black and brown people centered. And there was a couple there, tattoo artists who were masked. We were like, oh, I see you're practicing disability justice. We love to see it. Cool. Yes, my transition goals are very genderqueer, but TERFs don't like that and want to push people into one or the other without regard for nuance. And they do. And they try really hard to do that. And I don't like that. And I especially don't like when my brothers in transgender fall for it. Stop. Stop it. The worst thing is when I see a trans man come on TikTok and be like, trans men can't be lesbians. Stop speaking. Stop it. Don't. The same system that insists that trans men can't be lesbians is the same system that doesn't want you to transition in the first place. Come on. The same system that says trans men can't be lesbians is the same system that doesn't even want lesbians to exist. Hello? What's not clicking, Steven? The same system that says trans men can't be lesbians is the same system that says you are not a man in the first place. And I know that sounds real confusing, but the point is, who are you to tell somebody who they are and who they aren't? At the end of the day, language is merely an approximation for humanity and a human experience, okay? It's just not that serious. In a perfect world, people would just date whoever they wanted to date and sleep with whoever they want to sleep with. In a perfect world, people would be judged by the content of their character, all right? And not the contents of their underwear or the color of their skin. That was the dream that Martin Luther King had for us, all right? I feel you, and I want to be able to be fluid and do whatever I want without being put in a box. You know, the people be propagandized down and do, and we're not exempt. Ableism is so wild because being abled is always temporary for humans. Ain't that the Saturn truth? It's coming for all of us at some point, just like death. I don't want to end another live on death, though. I did that last time, and I think y'all didn't like that too much. So the point of this spread is you can't know what you don't know. And if you don't know, you should go find out. And once you find out, you need to be able to hold multiple truths at once. Okay? Hold them both at once and assume nuance in order to preserve connection and relationships. And sometimes it might be a little bit uncomfortable, but you can do it. You can do it. That's a skill. That is another skill to be learned. You don't got to be gay if you don't want to, but let other people. And you don't have to date gay people if you don't want to, but let them date each other. Let your man's wrist be a little limp. That's it. That's all. All right? Get out the MAGA pipelines. Somebody said that if you live in America, you're already in the alt-right pipeline. So you need to get out of it. Every single day, you need to be deconstructing the alt-right pipeline that is within you. All right? Because you live in America. That just is what it is. America is... What did I say? The alt-left? I meant the alt-right. If I said alt-right, if I said alt-left, y'all know what I meant. Alt-right. Get out the alt-right pipeline by being just a little bit more gay. Okay. Anyways, I'm going to leave now. I was on here way longer than I wanted to be, like I always do. One of these days, I will not do that. But y'all stay because y'all love it anyway. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and for listening and for sticking with me through the journey of arriving at this conclusion. It took a little minute there to get the wheels turning, but I got through it with some help from you guys. Thank you so much for participating in the chat. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your feedback. Thanks for hanging out. Elizabeth, it was good to see you too, even briefly. I hope y'all have a great week. Happy new moon. I will talk to y'all next time. Spiritual chelation, yes. So good. Okay. All right. Talk to y'all later. Bye.